Salam, Saimonani, Moweni, Namaste, Vanakkam, and welcome to this Father's Day edition of The People's Voice, brought to you by Shabnam, Palesa, Mohamed for Salam Media, broadcasting live from Etegwini, Durban, KZN. And of course, as always, we've got a brilliant show lined up for you tonight. So I want to be sure that you can be tuned in for your comments, your questions, and share ideas. And here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to look for the Facebook Live video on the Salam Media page. And I'm going to be sharing that to my profile for people that want to join us from there. But you can also listen live on the Salam Media website, the Salam Media or TuneIn app, or free-to-air decoders, and of course the Salam Media page itself for the live video. Your live comments on the Salam Media page, I'll be picking up from our wonderful technicians in our studio in Johannesburg. And of course your comments on my watch party, I'll be reading out as well. So let's look out for this video, and it has begun. That's brilliant. And I'm going to attempt to share it as a watch party. I've been having some issues with this recently. Let's see if we can get it right today so that we can have a maximum amount of interactivity. And there we go. Brilliant. This is working. I am going to now share it to my page, and then I'm going to start the watch party. Okay. So it's now public on my page. And you'll be able to tune in from there. Then I'll go back to my page and start this watch party. All right. And I figured out a way to do this. Let's hope that it works. Yes, start watch party. There we go. Watch party is beginning, and everybody will be able to interact on the show today. And we look forward to that very much, of course. We have a wonderful audience that's developed with the People's Voice and on the People's Voice. But without further ado, it is Father's Day in South Africa. So it's a very important conversation that we're going to have. The topic is, do fathers have rights in South Africa? When fathers are not involved in their children's lives, for whatever reason, we call them deadbeat fathers. And then you get fathers who want to be involved in their children's lives. And there are people and systems and structures, for many reasons, who keep these fathers out of their children's lives. Ultimately, this has a disastrous and destructive impact on the lives and the minds of children who grow up to have serious developmental difficulties and always wonder, but why didn't my father love me? The truth, however, is that there are many fathers in our country who want to be a part of their children's lives. And with that brief context, I'd like to bring into studio Solomon Mondlane, and we're going to see him now. Sadiq will bring him on camera now, but let me tell you about him. Solomon Mondlane is a father of 7 children. 2 of them are 9 and 12 years old, and they're alienated from him, kept away from him. And in his own words, I approached the court for an inquiry about parental responsibilities and rights since I was denied contact and care of my children after their mother, Precious, had passed away in 2017. I did a 67-kilometer walk. I was vocal about corruption within the Department of Social Development, and I went on an 11-day hunger strike. Last week, I celebrated my son's birthday on the street after 3 years of separation. This is how cruel the system is towards fathers in South Africa. This is child abuse, and it is destroying people's lives. Very important conversation for us to have today. Sadiq, please bring Solomon onto camera for us. And while we're waiting, I'm going to just mention the people that have joined on my watch party. Mohamed Matala, Nawawi Matthews, of course, great supporter of the show. Joe Grant, again, one of our great fans. Mohamed Mata, Imran Kasim, Ravin Govin, Nazia Bakis. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you on. And I'm going to be reading comments from the live video on the Salam Media page, as well as the watch party comments from what I've just started on my page. And I want to hear your thoughts. Do fathers have rights in South Africa? Should co-parenting be the automatic position when a couple divorces or separate, things don't work out? Should we just have co-parenting 50-50, both parents responsible for bringing up their child in a healthy and happy way, find a way to co-parent Instead of spending thousands and hundreds of thousands in some cases, battling it out in court, paying all of the stakeholders in the system, that money should rather be invested in the development of your child. That's what should be happening. Unfortunately, when situations become high conflict, or when there are parties involved that have an interest in making sure that the fighting continues to happen because it enriches them, ultimately who suffers is the child or the children, the parents involved, the extended family, and we end up with young people who are disturbed, they're depressed, they're anxious, they have suicidal thoughts. There's violent behavior at times. There's difficulty with them adjusting to relationships that they enter into later on in life because they have this thought in their mind that I was rejected by my father or my mother, because mothers are alienated too. Predominantly in our country, it's more the fathers that are alienated, but there are certainly mothers who are also alienated, and their rights are important as well. Our courts tell us that the test is what is in the best interest of the child. And that's very simple. It is in the best interest of a child to be co-parented by both parents. Sadiq, are we having any luck in bringing Solomon back onto camera? We'll welcome a few other people. Meanwhile, Zaid, Sayed Noor, Fahim Ghani, Firdoze Bulbulia is coming up in the second half of the show, so don't go anywhere. Sharon McAdoosh and Deepa Suraj. Solomon, welcome to the People's Voice, and for what it's worth, a happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. It's a wonderful day. It is a wonderful day.
I know you've got your little daughter Azania keeping you busy there. How I love that name. But let's get straight into it, Solomon, because you'll find that 20 minutes will go by really quickly. Now, when you were last on Salam Media, you had this platform previously to talk about your struggle to be in the lives of your children. It wasn't very easy to talk about. And I just want to emphasize that if any point in the conversation you're finding it difficult, it's okay. We understand. Men have feelings. Fathers have emotions. So if you are finding it difficult, we absolutely understand, and we can take a pause or maybe move on to the next question. But tell us, when you were last on Salam Media, what were you sharing with us via our platform about your struggle to have your children in your life?
Thank you for hosting me, Palesa. The last time I was here, I was actually crying out to the world, to our country, to the people in authority, to say, here I am, up and down the courts, and nothing is happening. I've been separated from my children. So I wanted justice to be served without much trouble, without spending a lot of money, and also taken from pillar to post. So that was actually why I was here before.
Wonderful. I can't imagine how difficult it is. So actually I can, because I consult with a lot of people who are trying to have access to their children, and I see the impact on children. I see how destructive it is. But Solomon, can you share with us, Uguti, what's happened since then? Since you were last on Salam Media, what's happened since then?
You know, I took the case with the Department of Social Development. They've been promising to investigate the case. Many officials from the department. And each time I engage with them, they will call in the people who have been investigating this case, the social worker, CMR. They will also call the lawyers for the kids, and they will not actually involve me in the discussion. And at the end of the day, they will start ignoring my emails. They will ignore my calls. They will not call me for meetings. So I've tried to go to human rights. I've tried to go to the public protector, but nobody was willing to come forward and help me. And in the process, what was bothering me the most is that the children were suffering while
I want to come to that. I want to come to that, Solomon, but I want to ask you this. What are they investigating? You're a father. You want to be in your children's lives. You're desperate to do this. You've done a walk. You've done a hunger strike. You've done everything possible. What is this investigation about? What are they investigating?
There is a stigma on fathers. Each time a father comes forward and takes responsibility, they see a lunatic. They see someone who needs to go for a clinical assessment. Each time a father comes forward, they see someone who's violent. They don't want to know the background, the way you have been living with your family. Each time they look at you, they see a criminal. So there is a stigma on fathers. So they have to do this. They have to investigate you. They have to investigate the father, not the people who are trying to block the father. They investigate the father who has done nothing at all. So there is a stigma on fathers. That's why they're doing their investigations, because if the person who's blocking me, like on my part, the grandparents have told them a certain story about me, they believe that. Even if I tell them my part of the story, they're not going to believe my story. They will want to investigate me thoroughly.
So there is a bias against fathers, and certainly this is unconstitutional. I mean, you know, fathers and mothers have the right to equality. Ultimately, the children's interests should be paramount, and naturally your former late wife Precious would want you to be a co-parent to your children. I want to read a comment from Cyril Palani. Thank you, Shabnam, for raising this issue on behalf of fathers who are trying to have relationships with their children. It's a noble cause. We must commend these dads and support their fight. And I agree. Like I said at the beginning, fathers who don't want to be involved are called deadbeat dads. Fathers who want to be involved are prevented from this happening, but it affects the children. Solomon, how are you doing? And how are your two children doing, you know, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, through this alienation abuse that's happening? Can you hear me, Solomon? Okay, Sadiq, I think Solomon's just having some difficulty hearing me, but he'll reconnect soon back into the show. And I just want to ask him about the emotional, the psychological impact, because it certainly is important. And there needs to be accountability for the damage that's being caused to the lives of loving parents, both fathers and mothers and children and extended families losing years of their lives together. Cyril Palani also says we must destigmatize these fathers. I absolutely agree. Solomon is
I'm
back.
still able to sit here and talk to you. It has not been an easy thing.
We can hear you, Solomon. Can you hear us, Solomon? Okay, seems to be having some technical difficulty. If I can just ask Ibrahim or Sadiq to assist Solomon. I'm not sure if it's the network, but certainly an important conversation for us to be having today, to be talking about the rights of fathers. I mean, yes, happy Father's Day to the fathers that are still with us. Happy Father's Day to the fathers who are in heaven, who passed on to the other side. But also, how do we say happy Father's Day to the fathers who long to be in their children's lives? Some of them for years, some of them die actually, never having that relationship with their kids, and their kids believing my father or my mother did not want me. What's wrong with me? What did I do? Why didn't my parent want me? And that creates what is called attachment issues, deep psychological issues for children to be able to adjust and live through this. And often the parent and sometimes even the alienating family that's doing the alienating brainwashes this child to say your father or mother didn't want you, you know, we love you, they don't love you, they didn't want you in their lives. So, you know, the child feels like they can't express themselves, they can't say, but actually I want to get to know my parents, I want to spend time with them, because there's this guilt trip that's going on constantly, which is hugely destructive. Solomon, can you hear me? Looks like we're still having difficulty connecting to Solomon. I'm going to ask Ibrahim or Sadiq to please maybe just give him a call and check what the issue is, but also joining us on the show, Mohamed M. Khan, Irvana Subramani, Ajit Ramgun, Varishka Soma Memdad, who was in the show recently. Welcome. I'm looking forward to your comments and questions on this topic as we try to reconnect with Solomon. A little bit of technical issue that we're having there, but I'm sure we'll reconnect with him soon. And we need to discuss this issue. It's no point in us talking about angry children and angry young boys in particular when we don't look at the root causes of what's happening. Separating children from their parents, from their father or their mother, is certainly going to create deep psychological issues. And certainly couples need to realize that it's not about them. As much conflict as you may be having with the other parent, it's not about you. You have to find a way to co-parent your children so that they don't end up resenting one or both of you for having traumatically separated them from the other parent. Brainwashing, etc., is not healthy, it's not helpful, it's destructive. And if you love your child, let them have both their parents, let them have both their families. Don't cut them off from this extended love that they can have in their lives. Don't limit their right to love. So I'm looking forward to comments and questions, of course, and to reconnecting with Solomon. I know he did tell me he has some connectivity issues, and I'm hoping that he's able to sort them out and we can bring him back. Or we'll have to bring him back on another show, maybe with a mom as well, who is alienated unfairly from her child or children. And the point is this: unless there's abuse involved, unless there is abuse involved, there is absolutely no moral, legal, or ethical reason to keep a child or children away from the other parent. Even when there is abuse involved, there's got to be some sort of an investigation, there's got to be therapy, there's got to be a whole lot of interventions that happen. Okay, that we understand and that we agree with. But when there is no abuse and there is simply a parent you do not get along with for whatever reason, you cannot keep your child or children away from that parent. It's wrong. And I think ultimately children grow up to understand and realize the truth, and then they resent you for having kept this child away from their loving parent or parents. So Cyril Pelani also says, these conversations must be held more so that fathers who want to be a part of their children's lives are heard and the system is corrected. Absolutely agree. I mean, I think in our country, there have been lots of efforts by fathers to be a part of their children's lives, and still a very, very long way to go. The courts still don't seem to understand it, or perhaps what we're dealing with is a system that's profiteering from the enablement of this alienation of children from parents. Solomon, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. We've lost a bit of time, so I'm going to ask us not to go to an ad break right now. Sadi, we'll take a break after Solomon, please. Solomon, we're going to have to skip a couple of questions because we've lost some time. But I provided some context to our listeners and our viewers, and we've got some comments going in the conversation. But what do you think needs to happen in your matter, Solomon? What needs to happen? What do you want to happen?
The voice of a child. The social workers, I requested them at the DST to listen to the voice of a child. Now it's 3 years I've been separated from my children. They've grown up. One of them is 12. They need to sit down with them, listen to them, what exactly the children want. And also, they need also to visit the Children's Act. What does the Children's Act say? You know, these are the things that can guide us, because the grandparents are fighting a Berkeley, their own Berkeley, using my children. So I'm saying, let them be guided by the laws, because the laws are there and the children are there to speak for themselves. It's up to the social workers to look at the laws and listen to the children. And also now come to me as a biological father and hear what I say. I'm a very, very, very patient person. I'm a person who really wants to work close with them. But now what I see an abuse on innocent children. Like, I celebrated a birthday of my child on the street. I had to celebrate and sing and dance with my own son after 3 years on the street. This is the person that I am. The violence that they want to see in a man, they haven't seen in me. You know, except the emails that I send showing frustrations because I want to see my children. Like the social workers from DSD said themselves, if they were in the same position, they were going to fight. That's what she said. I can fight as a parent. Any parent can fight. Even if you can take a chicken from the mother, the baby chicken, that hen can fight you because you are the parent. But I've been patient. My children have got only one parent, and this is me. And I'm very patient. Yes.
Solomon, what I'd like to do is I want to play a clip now of your interview with ENCA, because I think what we're talking about in terms of the Department of Social Development and social workers is something that needs to be ventilated and interrogated. Sadiq, can we please screen that video?
Thank you.
More than 60% of children in South Africa are raised without fathers. That's according to a Stats SA 2017 report. One father has staged a hunger strike outside the social development offices in Pretoria, asking for access to his kids. This begs the question, what are fathers' rights in South Africa? ENCA's Mandela has this report.
I want to raise them. I don't want to be an absent father.
A father's desperate plea. Solomon Mondlane went on a hunger strike to highlight his plight. He says for almost 3 years, he's been fighting to be part of his children's lives, following the death of their mother.
As I talk, I have zero access. So when I started the hunger strike, I wanted the department to give me that assurity that if you move there from our interests, then you will see your children.
Mondlane's children are being looked after by their grandmother. He says he was awarded supervised visits, but they quickly became costly. In an email, a representative from a child protection NPO stated she was unavailable to supervise his weekend visits. And she referred Mondlane to a private social worker who charged 600 Rand an hour. But according to the Social Development Department, the child protection organization in question is supposed to offer these services for free.
A child protection organization is the extension of government. So the government actually subsidizes the organization to render services in areas where government is not able to render services. So the services that they render are equivalent to what the government is rendering.
The Social Development Department says it's currently reviewing the father's case and will also be looking into the allegations about the NPO. Mandela, Johannesburg.
I wanna sing for you on your special day. They celebrate. Yay!
Yay!
They celebrate. I wanna sing to you, say. I wanna sing for you on your special day. They celebrate.
Oh, this
They
is so
celebrate.
sweet.
I wanna sing for you, say. On a special day, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate. Thank you, Auntie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we've just watched two videos, and Sadiq, you can bring Solomon back for us to continue the conversation. The first one is Solomon being interviewed on ENCA, and what's coming to light is certainly issues surrounding the Department of Social Development, as well as certain organizations that are designated by this department to be child protection organizations that are derelicting their duty. Why a father would require supervised visits in the first place is beyond me. But perhaps they'll say because he hasn't seen his children in a while. Okay, but when a child goes to a new school for the first time with a new teacher and new classmates, we don't put a social worker in the classroom. But fathers and mothers who've been deliberately kept away from their children suddenly need to pay social workers to have the right to their children. And certainly there is something very, very wrong there. Solomon, we've watched the ENCA video and we've watched your beautiful video. Of course, that song sung by Melody for Seth for his birthday. Absolutely beautiful. But it certainly couldn't have been easy for you to celebrate your child's birthday on the pavement. What do you think is happening? What's going on? Why won't the system, leave alone the grandparents or whoever is doing the alienating? Because that's 50% of the problem. The other 50% is the system itself. Why do you think the system is not letting alienated fathers or mothers co-parent or just be parents in their children's lives?
There is corruption going on at the DSD. There is corruption going on within the Children's Court. And they know where the problem is. Especially in my case, they have discovered where the problem is. But they cannot come out clean because they know this is hitting back at them. There is a scam going on there. And surely, after speaking with one social worker, she said to me, Solomon, the CMR, the previous social worker, has failed your children. They didn't only fail my children, they also failed me. They also failed the justice system. So we don't trust the justice system because I ran to court thinking that they will be fair. But now the whole system is corrupt. So these are the things they need to deal with. Unfortunately, my children are the victims of abuse. The father is a victim of this abuse. So this is the thing they need to face and come up clean and apologize and say, we are sorry. Because really, celebrating your son's birthday when he's having siblings on the streets, this is uncalled for.
It's very cruel.
What explanation can I give to say it?
And I can see his face. You can see his face. You can see what that child has been through, and it's completely horrific. We've got a comment of support here from Zahira Rawat, and she says, congratulations to those who make the effort yet are denied the access or pushed away. Remember, God is witness to every effort, pain, and supplication. Thank you, Zahira, for that beautiful comment. And watch party comments are continuing as well. Solomon, what do you want to do? Do you want to sue the alienating parties, that being the grandparents, the Department of Social Development, the CMR, whoever's been involved? Or are you still open to mediation, where you sit around a table, you find a solution, and you move on with your lives?
I've been open to mediation, especially with the grandparents. But also the stakeholders need to take full responsibility of the damage they've done. They need to. So my legal team needs to sit around and work around on how to communicate this to them. But mediation with the grandparents, because the grandparents are part of the children. I cannot separate them from my children. So I'm open to that, even though they try to bring new allegations, things that you don't understand in the process to keep me away from my children. But I'm always open with the grandparents. But the DSD, Legal Aid South Africa, CMR, need to take full responsibility of the damage they've caused to my children, to me. They must take full responsibility.
We've got 2 minutes to go. Firdoze Bulbulia, who is coming up in the second half, says, continue fighting for your children. They need to know that you care and you fought for them. Cyril Pelani says, it's a travesty of justice. And we've got about a minute to go, Solomon. So I want to ask you, what is your message to alienated parents and families? And also, what is your message to your children?
I love my children so much. They must know I love them so much. To the parents out there, it's not your child's fault. Stand for them. Fight for them. Fight for their rights. Until you get access to them, it's not easy. Sometimes it can cripple you. Sometimes you can go down the grave without seeing them. It's not an easy route. Imagine taking 67-kilometer walk, going for hunger strike for 11 days without eating a thing, going on social media, going on every interview, spending more than 70,000 rands, still fighting the same case. I have other children who need that money. The same children, they also need the money. But I've been concentrating on only 2 children out of 7 children. And I've got grandchildren whom I'm not in between them and their parents. So really you need to fight, because these children, they really need the father. Like Seth said, you look like me. You are my father. You look like me. He said, and it was just look at him and say, you just look like me. I said to myself, I don't even want to do a DNA, because all along I've been saying, maybe I want to do a DNA now. Maybe this is not my child. But he said, you look like me. You are my dad.
And he does.
Yeah, surely.
And he does. Cyril Pelani says, keep fighting. Turning Point for Men will highlight this injustice. And on that point, Solomon, how can people reach out to you? Where can they find you? Are you part of any organization? Are you looking to start an organization? How can people get involved?
There's an organization called Amazing Dads Network, run by my partner, Nozipho Zondi. They can go to Facebook, Amazing Dads Network. They can go Solomon Mondlane on Facebook. They can find me. I'm always active there. We can talk further about these issues, which is a pandemic. Apart from the COVID-19 we're facing, this is a serious issue we're facing, where fathers are alienated from their children.
Absolutely agree with you. And ultimately, it's the children who suffer. So we need to stop the fighting. We need to encourage co-parenting, and we need to expose corruption. Solomon Mondlane, thank you very much for spending this time with us today on The People's Voice, and may you be reunited with your children, God willing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, South Africa, for your support. Thank you, Palesa.
You are most welcome. So that's Solomon Mondlane. They're struggling to be a part of his children's lives. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling, but of course there are factors involved, and we need to keep the conversation going. In the second half of the show, we'll be in conversation with an award-winning film and media producer, Firdoze Bulbulia. We'll take an ad break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back straight after the break.
Years of experience, IG Hussein and Company are renowned for their quality Islamic wear and goods. IG Hussein and Company stock a variety of Islamic items, musallas, kitabs, Medina dates, perfumes and exclusive gifts. We guarantee you a unique and friendly shopping experience for the entire family. Visit our new branch in Overport at 202 Kenilworth Park, Brickfield Road. Open 7 days a week with ample parking and wheelchair friendly. Like us on Facebook or Instagram at IG Hussein for our latest promotions and updates. IG Hussein and Company, your Islamic lifestyle.
Never before has humanity faced a pandemic like the COVID-19 virus.
The World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus outbreak as a global pandemic.
Penny Appeal believes in prevention being the cure, and we remain firm in standing by our commitment to support and help those in need.
Because the border have closed, so are very affected. So
they are lacking in the supplies.
I hope government can find a solution.
Our response is to provide hardship grants to those experiencing a loss in income in the months to come, and hygiene kits for the vulnerable at home here in South Africa and Syria and Palestine. Show compassion in the midst of crisis. Donate to our coronavirus emergency appeal now. Be proactive. Be aware. Help save a life. Donate today. Call 031 11 00 573 or donate via www.pennyappeal.org.za. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Welcome back to The People's Voice with Shabnam, Palesa, Mohamed and Salam Media, your humanitarian journalism platform and portal. In the second half of this evening's show, we're in conversation with Firdoze Bulbulia, and our topic is women making an impact in media. And she certainly is a woman that continues to make a massive and profound impact in the media space. I'm going to ask Sadiq to bring her on camera so that I can introduce her and we can have a brilliant conversation. She's almost there. Welcome, Firdoze. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to The People's Voice.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Fantastic. Wonderful to have you on. So let me introduce your summarized biography. Firdoze Bulbulia is an award-winning film and media producer, director and trainer. She's the chairperson of Children and Broadcasting Foundation for Africa. She's produced multimedia productions for radio and television, served as the president of the International Center for Films for Children and Young People. She's the co-founder of Africa Best Channel, or ABC. She's produced 5 feature films and is currently producing a legacy project, Mandela's Africa. And if that wasn't enough, Firdoze is Festival Director of Nelson Mandela's Children's Film Festival and former Festival Director of the Zanzibar International Film Festival. I just want to start off by saying Womandla to you, Firdoze. I absolutely love the work that you do, certainly an inspiration to women in the media space. So let's get straight into it. You wear multiple hats, clearly as beautiful as the one that you're wearing right now. How do you connect and intertwine them while keeping balance?
I guess I prioritize where I can, and for me, a lot of it is really interrelated. So the work around children and youth media is, I suppose, stems from my own childhood, having been an activist and having been imprisoned in 1980 during the school boycotts. That period of detention and understanding that education was the only way out. And so my work around education, I'm a former teacher. In fact, I suppose that's where I should start. And I always knew that it was only through education that we could make a difference. And so as an Afrikaans teacher, I ensured that the students, because at the time, you know, we were in our little boxes. So as Indian school children, they had to pass Afrikaans in order to go to university. And because we were so anti the system, I had to really ensure that the young people understood Afrikaans, passed Afrikaans, but enjoyed Afrikaans. So I really came in with a kind of political aspect and introduced Afrikaans in a poetic way, but in a political way.
Poetic and political is fantastic. Firdoze, out of all your career highlights thus far, and I know this is a difficult one, but which stands out the most for you in your memory, where if you were going to write a book about your life, those highlights, those memories would certainly be included?
You know, I'm lucky because the other day, Vanessa Paramal, who has just had cancer, and had her voice box removed and has gone through a long process, asked me kind of the same question, and it allowed me to distill my thoughts. And I realized that there are epochs in my life. You know, I think teaching was a huge highlight. Going through the whole political system in South Africa and fighting apartheid was an exceptional highlight. And then going in through the media space, you know, I started with the Children's Broadcasting Foundation, where we started in 1993 to draw up the South African Children's Charter. At that time, there were only 4 provinces. And I remember going into, I love to tell this little story, which, oops, my family's going to hear now for the first time. I would steal my father's car, which was a Mercedes-Benz, and drive to Soweto and park it around the corner in somebody's backyard so that nobody would know that this Indian woman had gone into that space and started teaching and doing a human rights training. And one day I came out and the car had sunk. You know, it's sinking sand in some parts of Soweto, and the car had sunk. And I was terrified. I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going home? And these men around, you know, they came and they said, let's pick this car. And they lifted the car up from that sinking sand and put it onto the ground, you know. And I got into the car and drove home. And my late dad, it's Father's Day, and I think about him often. And my dad said, that car looks really dusty. I wonder where it was. And I never told him where it went to. But we drew up the South African Children's that way. And then, you know, one of the other highlights was really doing a series for UNICEF on violence against children. And we traveled to several countries on the continent. And in Ethiopia, we did something on marriage by abduction. And basically what happens is the boy in the one village likes the girl in the other village. And UNICEF calls them harmful traditional practices. So basically, he can steal her. You know, he steals her, takes her to his village. They circumcise her and marries her, and she's underage. And there's nothing anybody can do because it's a practice within the culture. Just like female genital mutilation, which is something else that I dealt with in Ethiopia. And so I was filming actually in Uganda with the Lord's Resistance Army, people who managed to escape from the Lord's Resistance Army. And there was a 16-year-old. At that time, my own daughter, Shaista, was 16. And I was busy interviewing this young woman who then suddenly got up and just, you know, walked out of the interview. And the adults around her were like, oh, she always does that. But I followed her. And basically what had happened was she had given birth and she'd gone to check on her baby. So in the interview, I think she just suddenly realized that I need to check on my child. And so I had to say to the adults, and I understood that their trauma anyway, and they were frustrated and they were exhausted. And I said, you know, all she needs is time with her child. I remember coming back from that trip and driving home with my daughter. And I said to her, that was the first time I stopped, and I said, Shai, I think I'm packing up. I'm selling everything and I'm going right back. I'm going back to basics. I'm going back to study. And this little Shai sitting next to me, I just saw the tears running down, and she was like, but Mom, that's where we started. And I realized this was my trauma and drama and not hers. But I did take time off, and I went to do my master's at Ohio University. And in that time, it was a brilliant time for Shaista and I to connect, because she was 16. And I remember saying, Shai, do you miss me? And she said, Mom, you're never around. There's no time to miss you. And it struck me really very, very deeply. And I thought, okay, so that's what we did. And we went off to the US, and she and I alone. And then one day we were busy doing dishes, and I looked at her and she pulled her face at me, and I said, okay, our time's up. We've had enough time to bond together. So we had a great time together. So in terms of the work that we've
anecdotes, you're going to definitely be including them in your book, as well as highlights from your career, which I think are really going to be fascinating, because you've encompassed so much. But we've got about 5 minutes to go before we take our first break, Firdoze. So I want to talk about your passion for children, right? Why is it so important to use our skills in the media and education space to motivate, educate, empower, and advocate for children?
The question really is edutainment. So you educate whilst entertaining, because you don't want to take the child back into the classroom, and you don't want to be didactic. Right. And the Africa Charter on Children's Broadcasting says children should hear, see, and express themselves, their languages, and their life's experience through the electronic media that reaffirms their sense of self, community, and place. And you see how well I know that, because it is one of the items. It's number 4 on the Africa Charter on Children's Broadcasting. And we use this, especially at the change of the SABC. The SABC during apartheid was really just English Afrikaans and really catered for white children wherever they were. And part of our work was to change that paradigm. And that shift meant that we were saying our children needed to see themselves. Black children, disabled children, rural children, poor children. And so changing that was actually how the education department at the SABC started. So I believe that, it is only out of education that people will get out of poverty and get out of the challenges that we have in the country.
100%. On that note, what I want to do is talk about Wazi, right? Because that's your baby. Yeah. That's your most brilliant project. I'm so in love with it. It's a children's edutainment animation series. And before we go to this lovely clip, tell us, Firdoze, what inspired this project and where do you see it going?
So Wazi is really, I guess, maybe 10 years in the making. It's something I've been doing for a long time. We really wanted to break into the animation space. And we started the African Animation Studio. In fact, we started it just after the film summit that we government hosted last year. And part of what we were saying was we needed to tell stories from an African perspective. Most animations come out of Asia. So even if you look at the figurines, they look very Asian. They don't look African. So we worked really very hard on ensuring that the way that the features of the characters would be African. And the team, the young team, the Popeye, whom we work with, we'd taken them, they'd come with us to Zanzibar. And the idea was to say, I think in a South African, Black South African context, we know our world in terms of a Black, whether it's a township life or a rural life. But in terms of our continent, we need to understand that there are 54 countries and people look like me and you, and we are African. And so going to Zanzibar, they were exposed to a very different Africa, an Islamic Africa. One of the characters would even wear hijab. And so this was really important for us, that we needed to look at characters that look very much like ourselves and our children, and that our children could identify with. And then just before the lockdown, in fact, we were about to have Wazi going out to explore this wonderful world. And I said to the team, actually, Wazi can't explore the world. Wazi has to be in lockdown. And so we kind of, in that moment, just pivoted the entire story. And it was Wazi runs to the window with her little brother. And instead of saying exploring the wonderful world, it says stay at home. And part of that, which is really important for me as a person working in the area of children and youth media, is that broadcasters in Africa, we don't really talk to children. We don't take children seriously. This age-old thing of children should be seen and not heard. It's something we've done for a very, very long time. And my colleagues, the broadcasters globally, during the 911 events or during the tsunami, ensured that they spoke to children. And so I was determined that we as South Africa, and for us as Africans, we were going to talk to children about COVID, and we were going to push that forward and first. And so I'm very happy to say that we've got an international research that we're doing called Children Coping COVID, which means we are now at the cusp of all of this exciting work. And in fact, Wazi has been amongst the top 10 animations. Part of that group is the Sesame Workshop in the US. So suddenly here you have an African animation that is competing globally. And I think this is something for us that is absolutely important in ensuring that our children are on par with all other children.
Oh, brilliant. I'm actually feeling the excitement because I love animation so much. And I can see Dr. Nanda Subins join the show as well. And I know that he's a proponent of animation, particularly keeping traditional alive. But what I want to show is not the wash your hands one that you did with Wazi, because I want people to go and watch that on your YouTube channel. You'll give us the details at the end. But the one we're going to screen now is about the countries in Africa. So Sadiq, let's have a look at that video from the series called Wazi. And I'm sure he's got it queued up, Sadiq.
Yes, I'm sure. I could just mention that this one we did because the kids were staying at home and we wanted them, besides the fact that they were learning about COVID, they also needed to learn about their continent. And it was perfect because it was Africa Day. And that was when it went out.
We've got a comment from Zaid Ismail. He says something mentioned very briefly, I believe, needs more airtime. That is, what does an African look like? This elusive identity undermines a lot of collaboration that is possible to contribute towards Africa rising. Important comment there from Zaid Ismail, an author. And then Nawawi Matthews says, 3 cheers for Wazi and Madam Firdoze.
Thanks, Nawawi.
Sadiq, do we have that? Sadiq, do we have that video ready? All right, I think he'll cue us in the chat. Let me just have a look and see. He says he needs a minute. And I don't know whether we should move on to the F show while we wait, but maybe we should, because I don't want to lose too much of time. Okay, Sadiq, we'll give you a minute more. Firdoze, your latest project, the F show, F for fabulous, F for faith, F for freedom. What inspired this project and what can we expect coming up next in the series?
So F is for Firdoze and everything else, which I think is important. You know, this actually started, you probably, I don't know if you're too young, Shabnam, but Felicia Mabuza Sato.
42 this year, I remember her.
Okay, so she used to do the Felicia show, and before that it was called Top Billing, Top Level. And what had happened, she tweeted the other day when Black Lives Matter started, and she said that somebody had said to her, your show is needed even more now in the US in terms of people talking. And as she tweeted that, I said to her, yes, Felicia, go for it. And we're right there behind you. And she was like, no, I'm not doing any more shows. And she challenged me. Now, I used to be often on her show and we are really good friends, but she was very unhappy with me calling it the F show. And she said, you know, I implore you, she said, please change the name. And you know, she was pushing it through as like, kind of, it's your brand. You should call it the Firdoze Bulbulia show. It's like, you know, the Oprah show. Well, I think there's also the O show. So I think, you know, for me, with lockdown, Shabnam, I would actually be every 2 weeks out of a month, I'm in another country doing something else. So I travel extensively. And the show is really the work that I would have done anyway. So the kinds of people I would have seen, the events I would have attended to, I thought, okay, why not bring this global meeting actually online so that the people that we would have met and the presentations we would have made, we continue to do that. So in March, I would have been at the UN on the special session for women. And so on the inaugural show, which was on the 16th of June, and we were quite specific about the 16th of June being Day of the African Child, which, as we know in South Africa, June 16th and the 76 uprisings, it was an important moment for me to launch the show and to focus on Black Lives Matter. And the second show, which will be now on the 23rd of June, talks to some really amazing women. And we're saying, yes, F is for female, it's our agency, it's our currency, but it's not an all-female show, because quite a few of my good friends who are male are saying, oh, what are you doing? You're leaving us out. No, I'm not. But I think it was an important space in which I wanted to push the kinds of voices that I thought were necessary. And it happened that all these were women, who immediately responded to the show and said, I have something to say, please would you consider me? And I think this is important. It's also about ordinary people saying extraordinary things, which is actually coined from the Felicia show, when she did Top Level. I think the point here is, I always laugh when people call themselves experts, because I really don't know what an expert is. And I'm like you, I'm going to be 58 on the 6th of July. So I've become a mama. I can't believe it. I'm now those aunties that they talk about, and soon I'm going to be the gogo, which is a strange phenomena, because so much of the work that we do is still within that space of young people. And that's why Wazi is so important to me, because it's something close to my heart. It has to do with engaging with the youth, ensuring, so even with the F show, that it's multicultural, it's multiracial, it's across so many denominations of borders, but also across age, because I think it's that intergenerational discussions that are so important. That's the way that we talk to each other.
The hashtag 1 minute show. I'm checking now. Sada, can we screen Wazi, please? Do we have it ready? And I'm not getting a response from him in the studio. So I think we're going to have to park it to later in the conversation. And we've got about 9 minutes to go, Firdoze, and about 5 questions. What are your thoughts on transformation in the South African media industry for people of color and minorities? Can we say that we've arrived 26 years later?
I would like to say that we arrived. I wanted to say we arrived in 94. Unfortunately, it seems that we've gone back a few steps. So we've gone, I thought we went forward really well from 94 to 96. And then suddenly there was a hiccup. And right now, I think in terms of the kind of very deep-seated racism, the GBV that we are engaged and what is happening in our country right now, the second pandemic that our president talks about. I think as women, we have, as always, the role, you strike a woman, you strike a rock. That has not changed. And so I would like to be optimistic and say that, yes, transformation is happening and that we are part of that. We are all the transformers. We have made that change and we need to be proud of that change, and we need to talk about it and we need to celebrate it.
Absolutely agree. Some definitive and insightful comments there. Joining us also, Fatima S.H., Shabnam Bak, Samira Ibrahim, quite a few people. Ismail Mohamed, of course, Vishal Ganesha. Ismail was also on the show and absolutely brilliant. For those women in media, there's issues of discrimination, there's issues of sexual harassment. But before we even talk about that, how would you say women are doing in terms of 3 areas: leadership, ownership, and social impact? Have we changed the status quo at all?
I just want to come back with the women in media. I think it's important to know about SWIFT, which is Sisters Working in Film and Television, a very vibrant, exciting organization that's pushing the boundaries, pushing the bar, ensuring that women are given support, particularly within the film and television sector. I think in ownership, we know that we have some women who have done extremely well. I still think that there are barriers, many barriers when it comes to women and ownership. We have to work that much harder. We have a more difficulty in terms of getting funding for the work that we want to do, to get support for what we want to do. It's unfortunate that white men still rule, and it's a reality. And I think we need to call it out, and we need to remind people, because we're sometimes afraid to say it's still the white men. Look at Prime Media, look at what's going on, look at Media 24, look at what is going on. And I really think, I've been independent for a very long time. I think my work politically started way before 94. It was right down in the 1980s when I was detained, all the way up into fighting for liberation. And post that, we kind of thought, oh, well, government, this is our government, it's our democracy, they're going to work for us. And in fact, that did not happen. I was part of the Women's Coalition. We were part of that organization that really pushed to ensure that women's voices were everywhere in government, in all of the structures. And now we have a little ministry, and I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Women need to be in every single ministry. Our voices need to be there, and particularly in ownership, because when it comes to the media, that is the transformative, that's the one industry. Look at what happened to Zoom. Nobody knew Zoom existed until the pandemic. Now Zoom is worth more than 7 of the big airline companies globally. So you can see that huge transition, and where the women, whether it's Facebook, whether any of these online media spaces, we are not seen in any of those, and it's important for us to push that boundary.
And certainly those of us that are in the space are creating that social impact. We have the leadership, so ownership must change. But let's talk about something controversial, Firdoze: discrimination and sexual harassment in the media industry. You've already mentioned we've got to work twice as hard to be considered half as good most often. But let's talk about the sexual harassment, this abuse, and initiatives to tackle what is very traumatic for women on a personal level as well as a professional obstacle.
I think the Me Too generation has really kind of opened that wound, and it made it possible for women to talk. I know of a lot of women who would not talk about things that were happening. I've always been a big mouth. I like to say this because my mother used to say to me when I was a child, that big mouth of yours will end you in jail, and it did. And I continue to do that, so I have been able to, and I've been lucky, my dad's late. But my father, I always say, was the most liberated man that I knew. He always pushed us as women, and he always said, you have your space and you must claim your space. So I've always been vocal, and I try to speak sometimes maybe too loudly, and maybe sometimes not giving other people the opportunities to voice what they need to say. But I always feel that people sometimes need a push, and there are fears, and that you understand the status quo. And people who are going to say, don't rock the boat. I've been told many times that I rock the boat. And this is not only in South Africa, this is globally, whether I'm at a UN convention, or whether I'm in an EU thing, or whether I'm at a children's media space. People know me, and it's kind of, oh, there she comes. And I think it's important for us to do that. But I also think it's important for us to support each other, to hold each other, and also for us as women to push that boundary. Because, if you've studied African literature and you talk about women policing other women, if you look at our cultures as traditions within an Asian Muslim environment, or women's environment, where, you are told what your place is and how to behave and to lower your voice and to dress in a particular way. All of these are barriers because it puts you in a box, and you're afraid to step out of that box. And when you do, there'd be other women who are bringing you down. So it's really for us to be able to support each other, to build each other, to walk on each other's shoulders, and to create spaces for each other.
Great advice that for women who are in the industry and those who want to enter the media or education industry, right, and make that difference. So I've got one last question for you, Firdoze, before we hopefully get to the Wazi video. Next week, you'll be chairing a panel on arts as a form of protest, one of my very favorite subjects. This one is for the I'm for the Arts movement, 17,000 strong. I'm on the interim steering committee doing some fantastic work of this movement, necessary work to challenge the status quo, because art changes people. People change the world. What are your thoughts on this topic, arts as a form of protest, and what can we look forward to in the webinar?
So, my degree is really in theatre. I did my BA Dramatic Arts degree. So people see me in the media space, but my first love is theatre and protest theatre. We grew up with that generation. My sister Nadia and I used to go to FUBA, which is the Federated Union of Black Arts, which sits right in Newtown. I chaired the Gauteng Arts Council for 6 years. I served on the National Arts. So people kind of, it's the hats, right? It's which hat is she wearing today? Protest theatre is where we come from. Dario Fo's work, The Factory Floors. A lot of my own theatre work had to do with when we changed the political history of South Africa. It was really whether we were on a football field or whether we were in a stadium. That's where we made the difference. We recited poetry. We brought in issues that were important. So it's that kind of protest theatre that we're talking about. And I like to say, when I was at FUBA, we used to pay 50 cents to go to the market theatre. To go to the movies was R2.50. And we were that first crowd, that first audience where I always warn people, don't sit right in front because you'll be spat on, you're too close. Yeah. But that was where we sat. And so theatre is very important. It's one of the ways of changing. The creative industries really is the space in which we change mindsets. Look at Hollywood. We all know the US. We speak like them. We dress like them. Our kids know them. Why? Because of the media, because of that theater space, that creative space. So absolutely, the protest theater is an important space for us to continue, because post-apartheid, we needed to create a different form of theater. And I think it's that new voice that will come out that is important.
Absolutely agree with you. And we need to get to the I'm for the Arts page for more details of that webinar. I'm going to post the link to the Wazi channel on the Watch Party comments and live videos so people can go and have a look. But thank you very much for spending this time with us, Firdoze Bulbulia. 30 minutes was never going to be enough. But thank you for the impact you make in the media industry, and all of the best with your many amazing projects.
Thank you.
Fantastic. We've been in conversation with Firdoze Bulbulia there. What a powerhouse in the media space. I want to say thank you to my guests, Solomon Mondlane, speaking about do fathers have rights in South Africa, and Firdoze Bulbulia reminding us that women make an impact in the media space. Ask yourself every day, every single day, what difference am I making in my country and my world? Revolutionary peace. Assalamu alaikum.